Hi, this is Tom Winder, the county purchasing agent.
And I'm Amanda Farley, Senior Assistant County Attorney.
We wish to welcome you to this course designed to provide you with some knowledge of purchasing regulations and Albemarle County purchasing policy. You will gain the knowledge necessary to conduct purchases up to $5,000 in value, including purchases conducted through the use of an Albemarle County purchase card, also known as a P card. If you find that you are working to plan, procure, or approve purchases exceeding $5,000, you will need additional training through attendance at Purchasing 101 class. Before proceeding further with this course, you may wish to pause the course and print your course handouts via the link below.
The Virginia Public Procurement Act, or VPPA, is the primary legal authority for procurement processes, and it establishes the basis for purchasing regulations for public bodies in the Commonwealth. It applies when the government is procuring from non-governmental sources. It also applies when you're procuring goods and services, whether they're professional or non-professional services. It also applies when the consideration is monetary or sometimes non-monetary, and regardless of who is providing the consideration. Use of competition is strongly encouraged for purchases up to $5,000 and is required on most other levels of purchases to make sure we're responsible stewards of public funds.
The Albemarle County Purchasing Manual is a document that provides the county's implementation of the VPPA. It is adopted by the Board of Supervisors as Albemarle's purchasing regulation and policy. The latest revisions were passed October 10, 2018. In handout number 1 is the table of contents for this latest version of the purchasing manual. The complete manual can be viewed on the Purchasing SharePoint site or the County Attorney's Office webpage. Handout number 2 is a shot of the opening page of the Purchasing SharePoint site. From the opening page on the Albemarle County website, select Departments and then Purchasing. On the Purchasing site, you will find a menu on the left-hand side of the page. At the bottom is the selection that will open the Purchasing SharePoint site. The site includes news and purchasing information, a current contracts list, forms that may be needed for purchase actions, and resources that may help you with your purchases.
There are potentially significant consequences for failing to follow the VPPA and purchasing manual for both the individual and for department and agency heads. If someone intentionally makes a purchase that is unauthorized, they can be charged with a Class 1 criminal misdemeanor. If convicted of that misdemeanor, that person could lose their job. The purchasing manual also specifies that any person responsible for an unauthorized procurement shall be personally liable for said purchase. There are also potentially severe consequences for department and agency heads. If an unauthorized procurement is made, such order or contract shall be void, and the head of such department or agency shall be personally liable for the costs under the contract or order. It is also possible that a department or agency head could be charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor. See handout number 3 for copies of these legal citations.
Let's talk about procurement authority. What does procurement authority mean? It is the expressly granted authority to bind the county or the school board to pay for a purchase. It could also be considered contract signature authority. So what is your procurement authority? For most in the county, it's up to $5,000 authority as delegated by your department head, school division head, or school principal. Most likely have been delegated authority for purchases not to exceed $5,000. Your appropriate business entity head has delegated your authority through the use of a delegation form that is used to delegate persons that will have authority up to $5,000. Current delegation forms were submitted to the purchasing agent this month If you are newly hired in the county or with the schools, you may be delegated in your onboarding process. All persons with delegated purchase authority are required to complete mandatory training by April 1st of 2019. Your successful completion of this course and subsequent submission of your certification form will satisfy this requirement. As a reminder, responsibility still remains with department heads in accordance with Virginia Code Section 15.2-1239. So who else has procurement authority? Other authority is granted in the manual. The county executive, school superintendent, and school chief operating officer can sign for up to $100,000. In their absence, their deputies will have the authority. Department heads, school division heads, and school principals can sign form contracts up to $25,000 with some limitations. All contracts must be in a form that is approved by the county attorney's office or the school board attorney. Handout number 4 includes a guide that details these limits of authority.
What is an unauthorized procurement? An unauthorized procurement is a purchase that is not within your authority or otherwise violates procurement regulations. Remember that your authority is limited to purchases of $5,000 or less. To think about it in positive terms, if you have been delegated authority by your department head, school division head, or school principal, if the purchase has a value of $5,000 or less, and if you have complied with the purchasing manual, you have made a proper procurement.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about thresholds in Albemarle County purchasing policy. This first level on this page is the level that applies to your delegated authority. From 0 up to $5,000, competition is not required, although it is strongly encouraged. Competitive procurement of goods and services can result in better pricing and better use of public funds. The rest of the threshold levels are provided for your general purchasing information. As you can see, over $5,000 up to $30,000, 3 written quotes should be sought. Over $30,000 up to $100,000, 4 written quotes at a minimum should be sought. And at this level, we start minimal form of advertising by publishing this on our purchasing webpage. Purchase exceeding $100,000 move over into a realm known as formally advertised procurements in an entirely different process. Sometimes there are some exceptions. Sole source, meaning only one source possible can provide the good or service that you're seeking. Or emergency purchases, sometimes there's not sufficient time to competitively procure to forestall an emergency situation. Thresholds for professional services are somewhat different from the thresholds for other goods and services. Professional services may be procured on a non-competitive basis up to $15,000 in value. Professional services over $15,000 and up to $30,000 must be based on a minimum of 3 proposals. Professional services over $30,000 and up to $80,000, a minimum of 4. And again, we'll publish this on the purchasing website. Professional services that exceed $80,000 are no longer in the small purchase threshold in regard to professional services and will go into advertised procurements. Your handout number 5 is a copy of the Purchasing Easy Guide and may be retained as a ready reference of these thresholds. The blue bar in the middle of the form defines professional services according to the Virginia Public Procurement Act.
If you are responsible for a procurement, you should determine the known need for goods and services. The procurement should provide for the entire known need. You have authority to procure for a known need of goods and services up to and including $5,000. You may not break or split a higher value purchase into 2 or more smaller purchases to avoid this $5,000 threshold. Also, you may not request that the county be invoiced at intervals for the purpose of reducing the estimated cost of the procurement. This is still considered splitting and is prohibited by policy. The purchasing office audits purchase actions to ensure that purchases are not accomplished by piecemealing or splitting. Your handout number 6 includes an example of splitting that was picked up on an audit by the purchasing agent.
Purchases that do not exceed $5,000 may be procured based on a single quote, as we mentioned previously. However, if time permits, seeking competitive quotes may net better prices. Also, as previously covered, larger purchases may not be made by splitting your requirement into multiple purchases to avoid the threshold. Purchases may be accomplished through the use of a P-card or through the county's Buy-Speed Online BSO automated system. You or someone in your group that routinely handles BSO actions may enter a requisition to generate the purchase in the BSO system as what is known as a Request for Purchase Action, RPA. Services must be provided by an authorized contractor or provider in accordance with Virginia Code Section 2.2-4311.2. If your vendor is a corporation, limited liability company, business trust, or limited partnership, the firm must be registered with the Virginia State Corporation Commission, the SEC, to be authorized to transact business in the Commonwealth. This requirement is at all dollar levels. Your handout number 7 is a copy of the Virginia Code that you may provide to a vendor if necessary.
Anytime a contract is required, the county contract template must be used. This is a different practice than in the past. The revisions to the purchasing manual now require, except in rare circumstances, that the county contract template must be used. Do not, under any circumstances, sign a vendor agreement without express permission from the purchasing agent. The county templates are available on the Purchasing SharePoint site. If you have any questions, please seek help from the purchasing office, the county attorney's office, or if you are a school employee, from the school board attorney. There are certain circumstances in which you must use a contract template. Anytime you're contracting for professional services, as that is defined in the Virginia Code, you will need to have a contract. Any contract that is for a year or has optional renewals that would extend the contract for more than a year require a contract. If you are procuring construction in any amount, including demolition, you will need to have a contract. Any term contract will require a writing. If a vendor offers you a contract and insists that the arrangement be placed in writing, then our contract template must be used. If multiple vendors are awarded procurements, each vendor must have its own separate contract. And then if the purchasing agent deems it necessary given the circumstances, a contract is required if he so determines.
We'll talk a little bit about purchase cards or P-cards. A P-card is often referred to as a purchase card, but it's a means of payment more so than a means of purchase. And I say that because purchasing regulations apply. You cannot exceed your authority, or you cannot split purchases to use a P-card to avoid threshold. When in doubt, contact the purchasing office. These purchasing summary points might sound a little repetitious, but this is a guide for you to refer back to. Know your limit of authority. Your purchases are limited to $5,000 or less.
You may not split or piecemeal procurements. This is prohibited by the purchasing manual. Do not sign quotes, offers, contracts, terms and conditions, or any writing given to you by a vendor. Those vendor terms and conditions must be reviewed, and you should be using a county contract template anytime you put a contract in writing. Ensure that your contractor is authorized to transact business in Virginia. You will need to visit the State Corporation Commission website to confirm that they are properly registered.
And one final reminder, procurement regulations apply to P-card use. The card is a means of payment more so than a purchase means. Your handout number 8 is a copy of this slide that may be retained as a ready reference to these points in this course. So that concludes the course. Please remember to execute your certification before you exit. If we do not have your certification on file, you will not be listed as having completed your mandatory training. Remember that help and guidance are always available through the purchasing office. If you need further clarification regarding the matters presented in this course, don't hesitate to call. The slide is provided as handout number 9 so that you can refer to it for contact information.